And thank you everybody for being here. This is your first time. Lama Losang is joining us from Gainesville. He is the spiritual director of our center and also a Lama and monastic of the Karma Kagyu tradition. And he has been teaching at our center for many years. We're very happy to have him every second Tuesday of the month here on Zoom. And if you're in person, we have the TV screen set up so everyone can see and hear. He teaches on a different topic every Tuesday. Sometimes it's related to what we're reading in the book. We're currently reading Excellent at the Beginning by Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, the founder of our center here. It's an excellent introductory text. If you don't have a copy, we have some available here at the center, or you can pick it up online as well. So thank you, Lama, for being here tonight, and I'll kind of turn it over to you. I encourage everyone to ask questions. Lama also loves to have questions, so if you're online, you can unmute yourself or raise your hand or put questions in the chat. And if you're here, you can kind of give me the wave and you'll get the floor. So thank you, Lama, for being here tonight.
All right, so thank you. My pleasure, and thank you all for coming as well. It is important that we devote some time. We have such busy schedules, and it's often difficult to have time for anything else. But this, hopefully, you have or will cultivate in your mind the importance of practicing Dharma. And the reading that you've been doing, Khenpo Rinpoche's book, is excellent beginning text. So we will start with taking refuge. This is, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about what that means, taking refuge. But we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Noble Sangha. They're considered the four jewels and really are the basis for our continued developing our wisdom, our compassion, our loving kindness. Begins with taking refuge. That's the formal way that one comes on the path of the Buddha. So we will 3 times, I will say it in English, and you can just listen and internally kind of follow me. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and the Noble Sangha. Through the merit of accomplishing the 6 perfections, may I achieve awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and the Noble Sangha. Through the merit of accomplishing the 6 perfections, may I achieve awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and the Noble Sangha. Through the merit of accomplishing the 6 perfections, may I achieve awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. So this is taking refuge in the 3 jewels, but the other part of that is through the merit of accomplishing the 6 perfections, which we have talked about in the past, may I achieve awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. That is the raising the bodhicitta, our loving kindness and compassion. So the difference between, and we will again talk more along the way about the 3 turnings of the wheel. The Buddha taught different, the teachings to different audiences, beginning with the 4 Noble Truths after his attainment of enlightenment to the 5 seekers that he was traveling with, and then on to the Mahayana and the Vajrayana. Those are called the 3 turnings of the wheel, or the 3 yanas, the Theravada, sometimes called Hinayana, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana. These are all aspects of the Buddha's teachings that, depending upon the level of hearers that were there in the presence of these teachings, he taught slightly different things. But beginning with the 4 Noble Truths, which is the essence, all Buddhist schools talk about the 4 Noble Truths. And we may touch on that a little bit again, but we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Noble Sangha. And there's a formal exercise that one does. It's called taking the vow of refuge, where one actually becomes a Buddhist at that point. When you have done your due diligence, You have done maybe some meditation, you've done some reading, and you say, I want to enter the stream of the Buddha's teaching. Then one goes a little deeper and formally takes the vow of refuge, which is the same thing. It's taking refuge in the Buddha of our time, Shakyamuni Buddha, who is the fourth Buddha of this fortunate eon. But there will be 1,000 Buddhas, of which Shakyamuni Buddha, who lived 2,600 years ago or so, was the fourth Buddha. And his teachings will gradually subside. And that is what we might call the Kali Yuga. It can be a very dark time. We don't have the positive influence of Dharma in the world. And Maitreya, who will be the fifth Buddha to come, but that can be tens of thousands of years from now. There is a time in between Buddhas. We say there's 1,000 in an eon. An eon is a very long time. It's the creation of a world system, and it's time, and then its dissolution back to emptiness. So from emptiness to its creation, to its duration, until its extinction. That is an eon, and it is a long time. So there will be 1,000 Buddhas, actually 1,002, it says in the sutras. So taking refuge, no matter what spiritual path you practice, there are indispensable practices that one follows. I was actually raised Catholic. I went to 12 years of Catholic school, and I was an altar boy and being groomed for the priesthood. And there are the 7 sacraments of the Catholic tradition. Baptism is like cleansing and purification. Confirmation is blessing of the Holy Spirit. Eucharist or communion. Confession, penance. 5th is anointing the sick, preparation for the dead. For death, matrimony, marriage, that's considered a sacrament, and holy orders, which is ordination, how priests become ordained. And these are 7 sacraments. And, there's a lot of similarity, if you really look, to most religions. I mean, there are certainly differences between Catholicism and Buddhism. There are significant but they have a lot in common. In Buddhism, taking refuge is considered, again, the fundamental step on the path to enlightenment. Taking refuge means seeking the guidance and protection and support of the Buddha, the Dharma, which is his teachings, and the Sangha, the community of practitioners. It opens the door to the storehouse of the Buddha's teaching, and there are many reasons why we might, the importance of taking refuge. And I'm sure that you've already read from Rinpoche's book about taking refuge. I would think so by now. But we can list several different reasons or benefits or blessings that go with that. Protection from suffering, for example. Taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha is seen as a way to protect oneself from suffering by relying on the 3 jewels. One can develop the strength and wisdom to face life's challenges and overcome them. It is said to grant fearlessness. We've been trying to find some refuge, in our daily life. It may be in our work, in our relationship, but these will all fail us because they are impermanent, and ultimately they will pass away and will not provide, true refuge from ignorance and from suffering. So remembering that the 4 noble truths are the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of cessation of suffering, and the truth of the path that leads to that cessation of suffering, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. So what is significant to me in the study and practice of Buddhism is the path. There's a lot of religious, different sects and different religions, but Buddhism is very clear in the guidance it gives us to follow the path. And if we do follow that path, the result is guaranteed, which is liberation, freedom from suffering. And that's the reason why the Buddha came. is to remove us from suffering, and taught us how to do that. So the first thing about taking refuge, for example, is the protection from suffering. And then we can say that the guidance on the path to enlightenment. So we need a teacher. Taking refuge is also important because it provides guidance on the path to enlightenment. By relying on the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Noble Sangha, we learn the teachings and can apply them in our daily life to cultivate wisdom, compassion, and peace of mind. And the third is a connection to a spiritual community. Taking refuge in the Sangha is a way to become connected to a spiritual community. And through this connection, we receive support, encouragement, inspiration from others who are also on the path to enlightenment. So it is, it's considered very important. We should always remember how fortunate we are. For those of us who have taken the refuge vow, it is almost miraculous that in this crazy world of ours, that the Buddha came, that we have teachers who they can teach the Dharma efficiently and effectively if we have the ears to hear it. There are limitless sentient beings who are wandering in samsara, and confused and frightened without a source of protection. So they have no reliable guide to lead them out of their physical pain and strife and the mental stress, depression, anxiety that pervades everyday life. You don't have to look far to see what happens to those who are wandering in samsara. Samsara is the unenlightened mind that is confused. So fortunately, we have found such protection, and it can make a decision to embark on the journey that will lift you out of samsara, out of ignorance, out of suffering, and into the light of your own awakened mind. And it's what the Buddha taught us. And so more and more people worldwide are becoming interested, in meditation, and are coming in contact with Buddhism, such as yourself. And through reading and study, they have developed the wish to take the next formal step in becoming a Buddhist. And it is estimated that there are about 500 million people worldwide that call themselves a Buddhist. And that requires taking refuge in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha, with a Lama or spiritual friend that grants the vow. So after you have heard and read Dharma teachings and put them into practice and tested them, and the Buddha says, don't take them on faith, test them, really do your due diligence. And if you're ready for the next step, then one can consider taking refuge. So this, as I was saying, conveys much blessing, and there's a formal ceremony where you're given a new name, which is like a new beginning. It confers the blessing, there are certain commitments of the vow, and opens the door to the community, to the teachings, and path to awakening. So without refuge, one really can't continue on the path to get certain empowerments and other things that are necessary as we traverse this path. Any questions about anything so far? I know I usually talk pretty fast and I say a lot of things in a short period of time. So sometimes it takes a little bit to kind of let it sink in.
No question.
Yeah, we have a question, Lama.
Okay, please.
Hi, Lama Losang. I have a question about choosing a teacher after you've taken refuge. Can you give me an idea of how you chose your teacher?
Well, it so happens that Khenpo Rinpoche was the person that I took my refuge from when he came to Gainesville in the 80s. And so that was a no-brainer for me. As soon as I met him, sometimes there's a kind of a feeling about a person, a natural kind of resonance. And so it was the first time that I met him. He came to Gainesville to do a teaching on the introduction to Buddhism. And I had the good fortune of he stayed with Joy, who was my wife at the time, and myself at our house. So we had lots of opportunities to be together. And he really presented himself in such a way that I was very impressed. Some of you know I have a PhD in psychology, And I was teaching psychology and we had Rinpoche came to Gainesville because we had a Dharma group that I was leading at the time, along with Frances Norwood and her husband, Joe. And Frances had a relationship. She had been to KTD, which is our mother center in Woodstock, New York. It's the seat of His Holiness the 17th Karmapa, who was the head of our lineage. But at any rate, Rinpoche stayed with us, and I had the opportunity to see him up close and personal. So in taking a teacher, one needs to really do their due diligence to check them out and see if they kind of have the qualities of a teacher that you resonate with. Rinpoche did. And that was the beginning of our center in Gainesville. I think that was 1987, possibly. It was quite some time ago. But how does one find a teacher? Well, first of all, if you take refuge, that there's a bond or a connection that happens with that person who gives you the refuge. So there is it's called tendril, a kind of a connection. So there's a link with that person. Even reading a book like you're reading by Khenpo Rinpoche, that causes a connection. So there are many wonderful teachers. You just have to find that teacher that you resonate with and is compatible, and you will know when that happens. I'm confident I can say that when you find someone who meets the requirements and has that kind of charisma for you, that is probably based on karmic causes and conditions from the past. But taking refuge does really cement that bond. So that started my relationship with Khenpo Rinpoche, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, who's the author of the book you're reading. I don't know, are there more, anything else that I can say about that you'd like to know?
No, thank you.
Yes. So again, the purpose of taking refuge is to serve as a guide on the path. So if you have decided, since experiencing enlightenment is our goal, that's the first source of refuge is the Buddha. And we wish to experience perfect enlightenment just as he did. He showed us the path to follow to attain the goal. And we follow the path with diligence and enthusiasm. And if we do that, we will attain the goal inevitably. So in order to achieve enlightenment, we have to follow the path, and the path is called the Dharma, as we said. That is the teaching of the Buddha. The second source of refuge is the Dharma, and it is our guide. And following this unmistaken path leads to accomplishing our goal of awakening. But we also need a community, so just like you have come to the center in Jacksonville, the KTC, that is a community of like-minded practitioners. And the Sangha is the third refuge. It is because of the devotion of the Sangha that the path taught by the Buddha was able to be passed down from teacher to student in an unbroken lineage to the present time. And Sangha members are those trained in Dharma who are able guides, to guide students on the path. And but practitioners they all begin any practice by first taking refuge and engendering bodhicitta. So I was going to, and we can continue with our mind training. I mentioned I was a psychologist, and what I saw in Khenpo Rinpoche was a supreme psychologist. He knew the mind. And I will tell you that if you really want to know the mind and really a supreme psychology, study Buddhism. It is mind training, and it can really lead to higher states of consciousness, but also happiness and joy and well-being in your life. And many things that you may go to a psychologist for. If you train your mind, you will uncover aspects of your own mind that will be better than any drug that you could take. So any other questions? So we'll talk a little bit about the four measurables if there's no other.
We have one question here.
Okay, please.
Yeah, this Lama, if someone does decide that they've met the teacher, is there a good way for them to request that teacher to be their teacher?
Yes, there certainly is. You ask them, and it is the students' kind of responsibility to do that. You know, there's the bee and the flower kind of image that is sometimes happens, and the student is like the bee, and they go to the nectar of the flower. The flower doesn't go to the bee goes to the flower. So once you've decided that, and you may have a teacher that strikes you positively in that way, you can ask the teacher, you know, about Refuge, and that is given freely, and that is really, as I was saying, a bond that is very special. You know, that is your entryway into the teachings of the Buddha. You've entered the stream. But you know, it's a relationship. They may not live in the same community. They may be some distance away, but the mind essence of that is what's important. And to be able to ask the questions, and of course, be able to take training. That can be done in so many ways. You know, we have access through our media, myriad media opportunities, whether it's online or otherwise, to interact with the teacher. But of course, it's nice to actually be in person with them when you can. So Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche was the abbot of KTD since its inception, and I would go to KTD for trainings and teachings and get my questions answered. And of course, he was someone I did my 3-year retreat. He was the retreat master. And when I did, it was the 3rd retreat that I did at KTD. It was said that Rinpoche, after this 3rd, he was not well at the time, and it was rumored that that would be his last retreat that he would be the retreat master for. So at that time, I mean, just to tell you a little bit about my situation, I was a householder, married, and the head of a school that I found, the Florida School of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. I was its primary teacher and director. I was immersed in the world. The next retreat was going to be happening just within a couple of months. Actually, you know, it was just several weeks away when I heard that this would be the last retreat. And I asked Rinpoche, could I please, well, what happened? I first asked Joy, who was my wife, and she knew that I had the ambition, the motivation, the intention to do a retreat. We just didn't know when that was going to come to fruition. But with the idea that this would be Rinpoche's last retreat that he would be the retreat guide for, I asked Joy if what she thought about it. And she was wonderful. And she said, yes, go ahead and call Rinpoche and ask him if you can join the retreat, which I did. And to give you the details, I called, and Karma Lodro, who's the retreat director, what's Karma Lodro's title? He's
Tough one. I'm not sure exactly.
He does have one, but Karma Lodro was there. I was going to ask Karma Lodro to, ask Rinpoche, but as it turns out, as has been the case in so many times, when I had a question or something was on my mind, Rinpoche was there, and it just so happens that Rinpoche was standing right next to him when I called, and I asked Karma Lodro to please ask Rinpoche if I could be accepted to that next retreat. And I could hear the question, I could hear his answer. He said yes, with one addendum: study Tibetan. My Tibetan was pretty non-existent, and that is one of the requirements. All the practices are done in Tibetan, so you need to be able to read Tibetan, and you need to be able to read it well, because we zip right through a lot of these the sadhanas and pujas. But at any rate, so that changed, that there's a lot of responsibility that was put on Joy at that time when I left for 3+ years, pretty much 3 years, 3 months, and there's 2 months of pre-retreat where one learns how to do tormas and play the instruments and empowerments and a variety of other things that are necessary to know before you even start retreat. And that was life-changing right there. But at any rate, that was my experience, how I came to do that. I forgot where I was going with that. But there must be an answer to that question. Yes. What was the question?
Were you talking about how you came to ask him
Yes.
to take refuge, or if he could be your teacher?
Yes. It just unfolded. I really never asked the question, will you be my teacher? It was just kind of obvious in a certain kind of way. I was there, I was just there with him, and I continued to be. So it almost went without saying, but I knew and he knew that he was my Sawe Lama. We consider that our primary teacher. So we ask the question, generally, that's how it's done, or you can just do like I do. When you have decided you're there, you get the teachings, and but it's good to formally, ask the teacher so they know what your intention is and they can help guide you.
So Lama, that raises another question. So let's say you have a primary teacher, but other teachers are visiting the center or coming through. Is it okay to interview with other teachers and other lamas?
Absolutely. You and most people have many teachers. Fortunately, we have that opportunity. But there is one special Lama generally, and you can take empowerments from other teachers, and you can have interviews, as you say, and they can be your spiritual friend just as well. Yeah. And there's generally a particular teacher that we would say is in that capacity as your main Lama. But you can take teachings from many lamas, and I don't think a lama would say have a problem with taking teachings with another teacher. There's not that kind of competition. The Dharma is to be explored and to be realized and experienced, particularly in our Karma Kagyu lineage, the practice lineage. So some teachers focus on particular things, other teachers, other things, but we want the whole gestalt. So sometimes teachers will also refer you to another teacher for certain empowerments or certain teachings. It's that way, certainly with all of the teachers. Karmapa has met many teachers, in our lineage, as you know. Khenchen Trongpa Rinpoche recently passed away, who was a primary teacher to Karmapa. And he was my ordination master, both Khenchen Trongpa Rinpoche, both for my Getzel, the intermediate vows, and for the full ordination of a Gelong monk. So I have a very close relationship with Khenchen Trongpa Rinpoche as well. And he was one of my major teachers also, as was Tralek Rinpoche. When I did Nundro, he gave me my Nundro instruction. So we have many wonderful teachers, and you will interact with all of them. But there are lots of different levels of interaction. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yes, wonderful.
Yeah, okay. Any others before we go on? And we'll talk a little bit about the 4 Immeasurables, which is really about cultivating bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. The 4 abodes. Okay, if there's no questions, we'll just, there was interest in the 4 Immeasurables. So just briefly, the four immeasurables are love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And you may be familiar with the when we say love, when we do the four measurables, it's like a prayer. May all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. And love means wanting all beings to be happy. In this tradition, you know, love and compassion, sometimes the people don't understand the difference, but for love, we want all beings to be happy, but not only be happy, but to have the causes of happiness. To have happiness, you have to have the causes of happiness. So may they have happiness and the causes of happiness. And the causes of happiness, you know, is the cultivation of virtue. And the second of the four immeasurables is compassion. So we say, may all beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. So as we wanted all beings to be happy, and that's love, compassion, we want all beings to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. So what are the causes of suffering? The causes of suffering are our wrongdoing, our unskillful actions that lead to negative karma. And that is the source of our suffering. So we wish all beings to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. Both of those are important. The third of the four immeasurables is empathetic joy. It's sometimes they're just joy. And we say, you know, may all beings never be separated from the great bliss that is free from suffering. So this is often taught that we experience happiness when other people have good fortune. For example, they get the job, and instead of being envious, you know, about it, and say, why didn't we get that job, or how come we didn't get that raise? We take pleasure in the happiness of others. So that is empathetic joy. We feel that joy for the other. And equanimity, the fourth of the four immeasurables. And you've already gone through these, I think, in your book. Kempa Rinpoche was talking about these four immeasurables. May all beings rest in equanimity, you know, free from bias and attachment and aversion, and having the same great love for all. That's equanimity, and it's a very high state of realization. Often equanimity comes first when we list these, because it's important that we have this feeling for all beings, not just for some, our friends, but about those other people who may done us harm or we have some karma with. We're not so sure we want them to be happy. But it is this feeling, this in terms of the four immeasurables, this is immeasurable equanimity. May all beings rest in equanimity, free from the biases, you know, of attachment and aversion, having the same great love for all. So those are known as the four immeasurables, and meditation on these four immeasurables is about training our mind, you know, and developing our human potential. You know, we appreciate the teachings in all traditions that help us to develop these qualities of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And we see in our current literature and magazines, you know, there is immense, you know, growth and interest in meditation, mindfulness, awareness. And we can see this interest is growing by the increase in scientific research that we see being published in professional journals and mainstream media. This interest and exposure is very good. You know, if we can cultivate this kind of feeling. And we're all looking for answers about how to stay healthy and balanced in this rapidly changing global environment, financially, politically, all these different ways. But for the world to continue to show such interest in how to enhance positive human qualities and create sanity by encouraging contemplation and meditation is very important. And this brings us to the four immeasurables. It's also called the Brahma Viharas, or the four sublime states. These are seen as the source of maintenance for our own sanity. The Buddha said that anyone unable to join one's mind with these, the four causes or sources of human sanity, will constantly be bound by the confusion of cyclic existence. And so he's talking about engendering the positive qualities of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity in our daily life. So we can explore these four a little bit more if you like, Any other questions or comments? So let's look a little bit more closely and contemplate these four sublime states. Starting with love. This is the word for loving kindness in Sanskrit is maitri or metta in Pali. You will see it like that, but it means love. And the definition of love is wanting, as we said, others to be happy, and is related to a feeling of friendship, without expectation. We just have this wish that they be happy. And it is the quality of the mind that is unconditional, and it starts with ourselves. It entails a heartfelt yearning for the happiness of whoever we bring to mind. And there's a practice that we can do when we practice these four sublime states. We actually can meditate on these four immeasurables. So starting with ourselves, we wish for happiness and well-being. And love is directed outwards, it's directed towards oneself, actually, in the beginning. And it's the start of our growing our love for all beings. Now we can begin to share this feeling once we've established it in ourselves. We can share this feeling with others, and those we're close to and those we're not. As we said, equanimity, which is one of these, it is for all beings, because we understand all beings inevitably suffer. So we extend this out even to those who we may not like, or for whom we have created some negative feelings toward, such as resentment, anger, jealousy. These are the best people, actually, for us to work with in developing loving kindness, are those that we may have not such a good feeling for. So this is really grist for the mill here. And although it may not be easy, the key is to find some good in them. Everyone does have some good in them. And even in the person who harmed you, do you have the wish, that all beings be happy? You can, with practice. And that's even with someone who has done some horrific thing that we see, mass murder or those kinds of things, because that he's going to suffer or she's going to suffer tremendously because of their unskillful actions, negative actions to harm someone else. The consequences of that will be tremendous suffering. And knowing that, you can't help but have compassion for what is going to be tremendous suffering for that being. So you begin by finding, something good in them when you do this meditation. Even in a person who might have harmed you, or that you might have some bad feeling about. Easy to say, not so easy to do sometimes. And we said that is loving kindness. And then we talked about compassion. And compassion, the Sanskrit word is karuna. And the definition is wanting others to be free of suffering, as we said, just as loving kindness is the wish for the happiness and well-being of oneself and others. The heart of compassion is the wish, may all beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. And this results in a sense of urgency, in wanting to help others. You see the suffering in the world. Helping others reduce their physical or mental suffering is the activity of a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is someone who's destined to be a Buddha, but is going to remain in samsara, remain in this world to benefit beings. And ultimately, the goal is to extinguish suffering by stopping the cause of suffering. So the bodhisattva's behavior is, constant expression of bodhisattva in action, wanting to tame that being's mind so that they don't continue to create the suffering that we've been doing since beginningless time. We've been traveling for a long, long time in samsara, which is going round and round based on our ignorance and our unskillful action. We create karmic causes and conditions that bring us to the rebirth in one of the 6 realms of existence, none of which are very attractive. But being born human did not happen accidentally. It is the consequence of lifetimes of good karma, of generosity and loving kindness to a certain degree. And we've developed the merit and good fortune to be born in a situation that we have all of the qualities, which we call merit. We say this is merit, to be born in a human body. But not only to be born in a human body, there's lots of people born in human bodies that do horrendous things and actually go to lower realms as a result of that. But you have now found access to the teachings of the Buddha. And if you follow those teachings, we can eradicate or, uproot the negative the kleshas, or the negative patterns, that habitual patterns that we've developed over time, and replace those with positive actions. So we develop the strong wish, that all beings be free of suffering. When we watch the news these days, it is difficult, to witness the amount of suffering that goes on every day in our world. I know many people are said to suffer from compassion fatigue. When we constantly see all forms of suffering on the nightly news, it has a powerful effect, and it can make us numb, weary, and emotionally exhausted. And each of these positive conditions also have what's called a near enemy, and grief is the near enemy of compassion. And if we get overwhelmed by emotion, we can succumb to grief. It just feels like too much for us. We don't have the capacity to continue our compassion. However, it can be an opportunity for us to develop our compassion in these situations. And we do not, participate in the actual suffering of another being. We have to cultivate compassion and have the right view about suffering, which is inevitable in samsara. But we don't take on that suffering ourselves. Even, as we were saying, the perpetrator of some terrible atrocities, we can muster a feeling of compassion, because we know that individual is going to suffer tremendously for a long, long time because of their actions. All right, anything about love and compassion that we need to clarify?
Well, not necessarily to clarify, but this having compassion for those who've harmed you. I have a student at my building. I do Tom Mem as part of our meditation. This woman is in her early 90s, and the people who have harmed her are most likely dead. She's even said that. Yet she will break into tears when I try to get her to open her heart and have compassion for even those who've harmed her. She seems to kind of be really stuck on this, and I'm not sure how to. I'm not skillful enough to try to get her to let go of this. I was wondering if there was any suggestions.
Well, she's got to be ready to let go of it. So forgiveness is a really, we'll talk about forgiveness. That is a very important part of this compassion. And she's got to have the merit and have the intention and the motivation to forgive. That is the first thing. So we would cultivate a meditative mind, through shamatha and vipassana. And once we calm our mind and make it workable, we can entertain this idea of compassion and forgiveness. But until that time, that klesha is just too strong. Can it change? Absolutely, it can change. That's not our true nature. Our Buddha nature is the expression of these things that we're talking about. But we have covered it over because of the many experiences that we've had. And I'm sure she goes over and over these things, just reinforcing it and making it stronger in her mind, not less, but even stronger, these kleshas. So it can be done, but it takes the experience of a skillful teacher and her willingness to want to do that herself. And, it's not about, a judgment or, forgetting about the legal aspect or, all those things. I mean, a harm done is a harm done, but that is done. And we'd have to kind of think about the person and what happened. And so cultivating just a chink in that armor by having them contemplate, have they thought about that person in a way? Do they know what her upbringing was when she was younger or recently, whoever did that harm? Some people are just overloaded in its expression of their neurosis in a certain kind of way based on their own neurotic tendencies and habitual kleshas. So that's one of the things that, brings us to the point of being able to have compassion or forgiveness, is we have to see that this human being is a result of causes and conditions. So her acting out in a particular kind of way towards that person, or, we contemplate this ourselves, there are reasons why a person would act that way. Often it has nothing to do with us, and they may actually be have some remorse for the action, but we don't know. She's not in touch; they're dead. We don't know what's happened with them. But some little chink in the armor where we can start developing this little seed of compassion and forgiveness, just like in our spring garden, this little shoot that's coming up. We have to nourish it, nurture it, and take care of it so it will grow. So that's what I would say about that.
Well, I've used a wonderful saying that has been told to me so many times, is that you will continue to think this way until you choose not to.
That's basically right. And yes, that's exactly right. And hopefully they will understand that it's their choice. No one makes them think anyway except themselves. No one has created this negative feeling and we just harbor it, and it can be a real rabbit hole that we go down. So that is our own doing, and no one can change our mind except for ourselves. But that's the good news, that we can change it ourselves. And that's the only way we're going to end this round of birth and rebirth and suffering. We have the capacity to do that, and that has got to be known. That's the Buddha's first noble truth. There is suffering. There's a cause for that suffering, and it's our attachment. It's our wrong view. And so we have to be skillful in how we communicate that. And so the person knows that they have total responsibility in their emotions, their emotional world. No one can create any emotion in you. You do that all by yourself. So anything else, any other comments about that?
No, it's a wonderful answer for me. I will work with her in meditation and on forgiveness to try to get that opening. That's
right. So the third of our four measurables is the sympathetic joy, and the definition is rejoicing in being happy for the good fortune of others. And by rejoicing in this good fortune of others and being happy for them, one can actually share in their positive karma. Sympathetic joy is an unselfish, positive mental attitude that wishes good fortune for oneself and for others. We can easily do this and frequently do this with our loved ones, family, good friends. If you've ever watched children playing and laughing, it brings a smile to our face too. We rejoice in that, and it just makes us happy. So rejoicing in our own virtue, underscores our progress on the path. So we can have sympathetic joy for our own progress on the path. For example, we might take a moment to just reflect on our own life. And if you can bring to mind and recognize the positive changes you have made and are continuing to develop as a result of your practice, for example, take delight in this. It will change you as you practice what the Buddha taught, and you cultivate virtue and you avoid wrongdoing and you tame your mind. That is the basis of the Buddhist teaching. Cultivate virtue, avoid wrongdoing, and tame your mind. This is the practice of empathetic joy. So, you can ask yourself, do I enjoy seeing others who are happy and prospering, or do I get irritated and jealous when others get the promotion, as we were saying, or have success? But by practicing taking pleasure in the good fortune of others, not only will it make you feel good, but science tells us that it has health benefits too. It'll lower your blood pressure and improve your overall well-being. As is forgiveness. We were talking about forgiveness. It has wonderful physical, mental, emotional, spiritual consequences. And it's not so hard to do, taking pleasure in the good fortune of others. It's worth practicing. I encourage you to do it. Any comment about that one?
Go ahead.
When you start to think about some of these, it sounds really easy, and you don't realize how often your mind goes in the opposite direction throughout the day until you start paying attention to it. And you hear somebody that, gets to go on some, like on some vacation or something, and you think for a minute, oh wow, they just went on some vacation. How are they able to do that? And then you think, oh wow, that's so awesome that they can do that. I'm so happy for them. And just taking a moment, or just whatever it is during your day, I think the more you start to think that way, the more you realize how often in the day you're correcting yourself. And
Absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. That's how we do it. And at first you have to catch yourself doing the first non-virtuous action by being jealous or getting irritated that you don't have the time to do that, or whatever it may be. And then we transmute that, into their happiness. Great, may it be so. But that is a very good example, and that's how we practice these things. First, we have to see it, and then we uproot it. Often I use the image of a garden. And so we are planting the virtuous seeds that we're talking about, and we're uprooting those negative patterns that we've developed. So as we cultivate our meditation practice with shamatha, which trains the mind to be steady, first of all, and workable. Once we, and I often use the example of training our puppy, stay. Okay, does the puppy stay? Not so much. It runs after the first distraction. And our mind is the same way. So when you are doing that situation, when you will see the mind going in that negative direction, you just kind of bring it back to your breath, or back to the moment, and cultivate that virtue, and you can uproot that tendency, which we have to do. We have to uproot the negative klesha, or habitual pattern. That's what klesha means. It's habitual pattern that we've been cultivating over time. That is the weeds that we have to take out of our garden, and we have to nourish the seeds that we're planting, virtuous seeds, and attend to them. So that's a very good example. I totally agree with that. So the fourth is,
Your question, Grace, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Lama Losang. How are you? Good.
Good, thank you. Wonderful. Yes.
Very, very good. Great to be with you tonight. Hey, I have to tell you, I really appreciated hearing some background on your life and your path. I really appreciate it, because I think that it's really helpful for most people to have someone share stuff about their path in life. And I think that's probably what we need a lot more of today, because I think, there's there's other discussions or narratives going around that aren't geared toward, you know, being honest maybe, and just giving someone the benefit of your experience and your path.
Right.
And I guess, you know, I can't help but to think, you know, I guess coming out of COVID, I think the biggest silver lining in my view, coming out of COVID was just the word relationship. I think we had to first learn, a lot of people had to first learn how to have a relationship with themselves. You know, those people who were living
People
alone.
didn't do very well with that relationship.
Yeah.
When
Well,
confined and confronted with who they are.
yeah, exactly. Well, you know, I gotta give some, I gotta give some credit though, because I am on I rather look at the glass almost full rather than, you know, empty. So I do think that, you know, I would just say we're in an age of relationship now. And I think the material of pre-COVID, you know, got a little smackdown, right, by COVID. But I'm encouraged that I think, to your point, that there's like a lot of people out there really wanting to search for a path that's right for them, you know, not right for everybody else in their orbit. I think that's the greatest thing that could have happened. One of the great things that could have happened out of COVID, and just hitting the pause button. Whether you're married, you got 5 kids, you're alone, or you got, you know, extended family around you, no matter what your interpersonal relationships were. I think that hopefully, I believe there were a lot of people out there who made good on the time that they had to self-reflect, and they had to reflect on what was around them. So I'm encouraged by it, because I guess for me, you know, I'm thinking about what's me personally, I'm thinking about, well, what's my strategy for the last part of my life. And you know, there's younger people certainly who aren't really thinking of that, and I was one of them. But right now I'm thinking, you know, how am I going to make the best of my last years, and what's it going to be based on? And it has to be based on spiritualism and relationship, because the material isn't, to your point, isn't going to hold you.
No,
It's not going to keep you warm at night.
It's having the right view. That is the first of the Noble Eightfold Path. You have to have the correct view. So a lot of people may have been in lockdown, and they can go in a lot of different directions, left to their own devices. What I like about Buddhism, and coming from psychological, you know, as a psychologist, is the path that the Buddha, he was extremely wise, and he showed a path, and you don't always have that path that you can follow. And left to our own devices since beginning of time, we haven't done so well. But it is true that, you know, we had an opportunity, and I appreciate your point of view and how you navigated that experience. I hope many did, but I'm not so sure. That is really the strength of the Buddhist path, is that there is a method. The Buddha taught a very clear method, and if we follow it, we will get the result. Now, there's a lot of different methods out there. Some are not towards enlightenment, quite the opposite. But I appreciate what you say, and I'm happy for you that you had that experience and you're contemplating, you know, what's next.
For sure.
And
thank you very much for the discussion, because, you know, at the end of the day, if you know, to your point, you know, our minds, right, if we're only having a vacuum conversation with ourselves, right, we're going to go in, we're going to be doing circle thinking. I guess there's that saying that the mind that creates the problem isn't the mind that solves it. So sometimes, as far as I'm concerned, I'm having much more discussion than I've ever had in my life around, how I feel and how I feel toward myself and others.
More often, it's a matter of, it's not so much solving problems, it's dissolving problems. We can go round and round and chase our tail, but if we can just continue to cultivate a clear, tranquil, calm state of mind, we can sort it out a lot easier than being pushed and pulled by something that's called the four pairs of limited for earthly, worldly pleasures, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and shame. That's usually what motivates and pushes people, but we can go beyond that.
Yeah, thank you so much for the discussion.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for adding to it. So we're now at the fourth of the four immeasurables, which is equanimity. And as I was saying, probably the most important is that when our mind is clear, when our mind is tranquil and at ease, and not being overpowered by our delusions, mental dullness, agitation, all of these things, we can, that's the nature of the mind, is just clear awareness. And we come to that through, it's always meditation. We have to, as we were saying, cultivate a workable mind through shamatha, but shamatha is not the end all and be all meditation. We have to cultivate the attention, and shamatha is mindfulness. We have to cultivate mindfulness first. And then we have to apply that mindfulness in insight, for insight meditation. That's what vipassana is. You hear those two terms, shamatha and vipassana. Vipassana is insight meditation. And once we've stabilized the mind, we can rest in that stable mind. And that is the point of absorption in this clear, joyful, natural mind of ours, our Buddha nature. But that doesn't really happen overnight. And it takes, we may have glimpses of that, and we want to expand that experience. We want to have the direct experience of the nature of our mind. And that is a gradual realization that comes with our persistence, our motivation, our intention. So we do not discriminate, when we're talking about equanimity, we don't discriminate between friend, enemy, stranger, but we regard beings as equal. And equanimity is the basis for our unconditional altruistic love and compassion and joy for others' happiness. Our anxiety, worry, stress, paranoia, are caused by our projections of, good person, bad person, our ideas of this, that, and the next thing, which are just made up, basically, our projections. We can only see the world based on the level of our own realization. But mostly, as I was saying, we concern ourselves with the 8 worldly dharmas, as they're called. And those things are just pushing and pulling us. They describe the 4 things that we hope for in life and the 4 things that we're afraid might happen. And we want good things in life, and we fear losing them, and we seek comfort and beautiful things, and we fear poverty and misery and discomfort, and want to be praised and told how wonderful we are. But this practice helps us to disengage from hopes and fears and shifts the quality of our experience. So consequently, it becomes less likely that we will be pushed and pulled by the vicissitudes of life, and we can be stable, and we have an attitude of acceptance and satisfaction. Being satisfied with what we have is pretty good. And we need to cultivate that. Usually in our materialistic society, we're always exposed to the latest, greatest, newest thing that we must have to be happy. But we can see that doesn't work so much that way. So we expand our mind to include immeasurable number of beings, and think, may all beings experience equanimity in their lives. And this opening and expansion of our mind and heart is what grows the feeling of equanimity. And our perspective becomes vast. When we talk about these 4 immeasurables, we're talking about immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable empathetic joy and immeasurable equanimity. So we give ourselves, a few minutes to practice this meditation. And as a result, this practice of equanimity is our prejudices, our strong likes and dislikes begin to dissolve, and our love and compassion, joy, and equanimity grow. So again, I encourage you to spend some time with that. And I've forgotten what Rinpoche has said about it, but turn your mind towards the Dharma in that way, and practice what you've been exposed to here in your training. Other questions or comments?
That's a hard one.
Yeah, well, you have to have the right motivation. First you have to develop the motivation. You have to have the why. We all want to be, we have to ask ourselves a question. What kind of a person do I want to be? And you really have to go deep with that one. Do you want to have a lot of money? Do you want to have the big house? Do you want to have the new car? You want to have this whatever relationship in your mind's eye is the supreme relationship? Or do you want to cultivate the inner virtues that we're talking about here? And the difference in one's approach to that, or how you proceed in the world, is going to be how you answer that question. What kind of a person do I really want to be?
I feel like my hardest attachments are typically more inner, like my attachments to my feelings and things like that, my reactions and I definitely am working on it and trying to do better, but I do see that I have attachments to the way I view things and have always viewed them. It's hard to change that once it's always been a part of you.
Absolutely. That's why we call them habitual patterns. They are habits from this life and probably past lives as well. We've got these seeds well established in our Alaya consciousness that has a memory, has stored these seeds of our past experiences. And when the time is ripe, they just manifest themselves. So, but asking that question, or seeing that is the first step. Just like when we do our shamatha meditation, we see these things bubble up, and we just see them as thinking or feeling, and we let them go. We don't attach ourselves to them. They're just very ephemeral, and you can go through so many different emotions in the course of a day. We create them, but we have to see how we work with them. The mind is very powerful, and it is the mind that can work with these things. And we tame our mind. We do this. Buddhism is mind training. There's just what it is. And meditation is an important part of this mind training. So I talked about shamatha. Shamatha, or tranquility meditation, is a form of meditation the Buddha taught to establish basic tranquility and calmness of mind. And this is essential to progress along the path. Meditation is the process of directly experiencing the clear awareness of your own mind. So also, since each person's mind is different from everyone else's mind, each person's meditation is also going to be different. So how you do this is very personal to yourself. It is always good, to have, individual instruction and to attend the center, and when possible, ask the questions to help with your meditation practice, with a qualified meditation teacher. But through calming the mind, we can experience a state of peace and tranquility. And this, we can see what pushes us, this ego self, this preoccupation with ourself and our happiness. So this is a prerequisite leading to mindfulness, insight, and wisdom. And it affects every experience of how we perceive the world. As one deepens their meditative practice, the mind grows calm and patient, relaxed, at ease, and able to see more clearly. And that's really the graduated path that we're on. If you accept that and you have the motivation and intention to follow the Buddhist teaching. And that's also what's important about the Sangha, that we support each other in that endeavor. So it affects every experience and how we perceive the world. As one deepens their meditative experience, the mind grows calm and patient, relaxed, at ease, and as I say, able to see more clearly. And it doesn't happen without right effort, which is also one of the perfections, as well as one of the Eightfold Path. You know, we have to have right effort. It takes effort to accomplish the goal. And we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are, you know, and we're all, as we say, in that way, our happiness is a choice that we make. And we can choose to be happy if we know how to do that. And as I say, I often use the analogy of training. Our mind is very much like training a puppy. And our minds are easily distracted. You say, stay. And if your puppy's like my puppy, she immediately runs off at the slightest distraction. And you sit the puppy down and you go through the training repeatedly. And in training the mind or the puppy, it is we must start over and over again. So we return again and again. In shamatha, we use the breath as our anchor. But getting mad at yourself or or at the puppy, it does not help. You know, it is a matter of it's not a matter of force or coercion. You just begin again to tame the mind with patience and perseverance. The good news is both the puppy and our mind are trainable. So we can persist in training our mind. But we're all different, as I said, that no one has the same causes and conditions of your mind. You know, they are very personal to you. And if you understand the Buddhist cosmology and rebirth and the causes and conditions that produce our incarnation, that is a matter of mind and our mind stream that we've been cultivating since beginningless time. So there's no one who has a mind like yours. Never has been, never will be. You are very individual in that regard. So your meditation and the karmic things that you encounter are very individual. So we have to cultivate a regular daily practice that requires an understanding of value of meditation and why meditation is important. And once we establish that important place it must take in our life, our progress is pretty much guaranteed. It's assured. But first things first, you have to establish your why. Why am I meditating? This seems boring. There's a story about an old story. A student was complaining to his teacher while staying on the bank of a river that following the breath was boring. And the master grabbed the student, held his head underwater in the river. And when the student was released, he came up gasping for a breath of air. The master said, well, did you find the breath boring? And although a bit harsh, you know, the student will not soon forget that lesson. And young or old, you know, the length of our life is unknown to each of us. And how we spend our time is one of the few things or real choices that we can make. So achieving peace of mind is essential. We all want to be happy, and we want to have peace of mind, and we can achieve it with the proper motivation, discipline, and perseverance in our practice. It is really like that, and you have to understand that. So we need to establish a daily practice.
Lama, we have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's another observation. Thank you, Lama. I told you the longer we stay on here, the more you're enriching my mind here. I guess I was thinking probably one challenge for me was finding. I don't know, I'm struggling for the word, but let me just put in a word, value, right? struggling to find value from what I thought I valued a lot, right?
Yeah.
In my previous life. So I've had a pretty big break in the last 2 years, last 2 years in my career, I decided to stop my career. Lots of people departed this life in the last year or two, and there was a lot of change. Let's say just a lot of change that really hit the core of emotions, right? So I guess the thing for me was the challenge was to saying, oh, well, there were these things that I valued previously. And then now I'm just valuing something that seems smaller and almost insignificant. Like, I don't know, like saving a cat's life, right? So I decided I'd volunteer, volunteer the cat.
Not to the cat, it's not insignificant.
I understand that, but so most of the time, and mind you, there's the folks that I'm around are very dedicated to that, and so am I, and it is a pretty noble thing to do, and the lengths that we all go through. But then I think about it, and I said, well, sometimes every once in a while I have this thought, and again, this is having to, train your mind and have a chat with your mind and say, why are you bothering to think this? Every once in a while I'll think, well, of what significance does this make when there's millions of cats out there roaming around
Each one that you help, yes.
the world, right? There's millions of cats around there roaming around the world, and I just helped one today in the moment. And who, what's the significance of that? Like, to anybody, I guess, to maybe a potential doctor down the line, but like and for me, my personal thing, I was like, I used to gauge accomplishments and achieving my goals in a much different way. So it's a big learning.
You can achieve enlightenment one cat at a time.
Thank you. And I think I am, because, and I guess I have to extend that to the ants and the bugs in the pool, because I never let them drown. They don't drown on my watch.
Well, good. It's good that you have that consciousness and awareness. All those sentient beings are important. And that's our problem. We don't see them as important. We don't see anyone as important as ourselves. And that is really the point of what we're talking about, is to see that every situation is important.
Well, thank you, because that's what my ego says to me, is like, hey, how important is that ant? It's one of a billion, trillion, right? How important is that? And that's my ego talking. And then the other part of me says, yes, all life, right?
All life, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why we cultivate bodhicitta. That is the mind of enlightenment. That is the path of the bodhisattva. Of course, human beings have more potential to develop their bodhicitta, because we have all the causes and conditions. That ant really can't do the meditation like we can do it, but it is still, we don't want to deny that being of that possibility. There are Buddhas in every realm, in the animal realm, in the hell realm. They have the potential for enlightenment. So we don't want to interfere with their capacity for enlightenment. We will enhance their life the best we can.
Thank you. We're probably one of the few who think that, because people just generally step on it. They'd sooner step on it because it's in their way, or it's inconvenient. But anyway,
that's not the mind of a bodhisattva. That's not your mind.
Thank you.
And what other people think, that's the world we have, which is not an enlightened culture. But you have to be the light. Lead by example.
Thank you. I try.
Yeah, that's all we can do.
That's right.
That will take you to the goal. But if you don't try, you won't. So don't begrudge your trying. There's a story of a monk who was trying to cultivate virtue, and you may have heard the story of the black and white stones. In the beginning, there was a black and white stones that he would have, and for every negative action, he would have put a black stone in his pocket, and for every virtuous action, he would put a white stone in his pocket. And before he started really working on this, at the end of the day, it was pretty even: black stones, white stones, sometimes more black, sometimes more white. But as you really focus your awareness on this and cultivate virtue and avoid wrongdoing, he just was cultivating white stones. So let's cultivate white stones.
Thank you. Appreciate it. With a big smile on my face.
Right.
I think we
Speaking
have.
of cats,
Yeah, go ahead,
speaking of cats, my cat loves the sound of your voice, Lama.
Oh, good. He likes the Dharma. It's probably not my voice. He's just tuning into the Dharma. It's
Maybe that's it.
so I think we are running out of time. Any final questions or comments before we close and do our dedication of merit? Well, I do appreciate you being here and taking the time to listen to the Dharma. And now we have to hear it, contemplate it, and practice it. Those are the three aspects for a practitioner, and that is essential. When listening to the Dharma, that is the first part of it. And then contemplating it, the same thing when you're reading. It says, in the sutra, it says, listen to the Dharma, but you can read the Dharma. That is the same situation. And then you contemplate it. And then you practice it. You put it into your daily life. It's not just on the cushion. We have to be able to practice the Dharma. That's very meritorious. And the cultivation of merit is important. All right. Any other announcements that need to be made, Mike?
Just that we'll have practice here at the center at 9 a.m. on Saturday for silent sitting meditation. We're currently reading Cities of God at 10 a.m. on Saturday, and then Chenrezig and Amitabha at 10:30.
Just a little bit more of, about my history. When I was in retreat, Lama Karma was also in retreat with me. And he was asking Rinpoche about the Cities of God. And at our breakfast table, Rinpoche told us those stories that you're reading about. And that was another aspect of his skillful means to talk about these siddhas, those that have accomplished a certain level of wisdom and realization. And so that gave us, more incentive, to practice. So Lama Karma would ask the question, and Rinpoche would answer that, and that became the book Cities of Ga. All right, if there's no other questions or comments, let's dedicate the merit. So we dedicate the merit to all sentient beings and their ultimate enlightenment. And at this moment, for all of the peoples and nations of the earth, may not even the name disease, famine, war, suffering be heard. Rather, may pure conduct, merit, wealth, and prosperity increase. May supreme good fortune and well-being arise in the minds of beings, and may all be auspicious for us. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your attention. Look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you, Lama Losang. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasant dreams.
See you next month, hopefully.
Indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night, Mike.